The ground shook as another plasma bomb exploded nearby. David Price wiped the sweat and dirt from his face while he worked on a wounded soldier. His hands moved quickly, sealing a deep cut on the man's arm. Around him, the sounds of war filled the air. Guns fired, people shouted, and metal crashed against metal. David was a medic in the human army. He had been fighting in this war for 2 years now. The enemy was a race of bug-like aliens called the Swarm. They wanted to take over every planet in the galaxy. The humans and their allies were trying to stop them. The planet they fought on today was called Crimson Ridge. It was a mining world with red rocks and deep caves. The Swarm wanted it because of the rare metals hidden underground. David did not care about metals right now. He only cared about saving lives. Medic. "Over here!" someone called out. David grabbed his medical bag and ran toward the voice. He jumped over broken rocks and dodged falling pieces of metal. When he reached the spot, he saw a human soldier pointing toward a large crater. "There's someone down there," the soldier said, "but I don't think it's one of ours." David looked down into the hole. At the bottom lay a huge creature with dark red scales. It had wings, 4 legs, and a long tail. David had never seen a real dragon before, but he knew what this was. The dragons were allies of the humans. They were strong fighters who could fly and breathe fire. This dragon was hurt badly. One wing was bent at a wrong angle. Dark blood covered its side. Its eyes were closed, and it breathed in short, painful gasps. "We need to move," the soldier said. "The Swarm is coming back. Leave it and let's go." David stared at the dragon. It was still alive. He was a medic. His job was to save lives. It did not matter if the life belonged to a human or a dragon. "Help me get down there," David said. "Are you crazy? That thing weighs as much as a truck. We can't carry it." "I'm not leaving anyone behind." David climbed down into the crater. The dragon was even bigger up close. Its head was as long as David's whole body. Each tooth was like a knife. But those teeth were not scary now. The dragon was dying. David opened his medical bag. He had supplies for humans, not dragons. But blood was blood and wounds were wounds. He started by stopping the bleeding from the dragon's side. He pressed bandages against the cuts and used quick seal foam to close the smaller ones. The dragon's eyes opened. They were bright green like emeralds. The creature looked at David with surprise and confusion. It tried to speak but only made weak sounds. "Easy," David said softly. "I'm here to help." He moved to check the dragon's wing. It was broken in 2 places. David had never fixed a dragon wing before, but he knew about bones. He found some metal rods in his bag and used them to set the wing straight. Then he wrapped it tight with bandages. The dragon spoke again, this time in words David could understand. Dragons learned human language when they joined the war. "Why?" the dragon whispered. "Why help me?" "Because you needed help," David said simply. The ground shook again. The soldier above called down, "David! We have to go now. The bugs are coming." David looked at the dragon. It was too heavy for him to carry alone, but he could not leave it here. The Swarm would kill it for sure. "Can you move?" David asked the dragon. The dragon tried to stand but fell back down. "My wing, too much pain," David thought quickly. He pulled out a pain medicine shot from his bag. It was meant for humans, but maybe it would work on dragons too. He gave the dragon the shot in its leg. "Try again in a minute," David said. While they waited, the dragon told David its name. "I am Raven," it said. "Flamewing Raven of the Mountain Clan. I'm David. David Price." "David Price," Raven said the name slowly. "You are brave for such a small human." The medicine started to work. Raven was able to stand up, though she moved slowly and carefully. David helped her climb out of the crater. When they reached the top, the other soldiers stared in shock. "We can't take that thing with us," one soldier said. "It will slow us down." "Then we all stay together," David said firmly. They started moving toward the pickup point where the rescue ships would come. Raven walked beside David, limping but determined. The other soldiers formed a circle around them, watching for enemies. They were halfway to safety when the Swarm found them. Black insect-like creatures poured over the rocks toward them. The soldiers opened fire, but there were too many bugs. "Run!" David shouted, but Raven could not run fast with her hurt wing. David stayed beside her, helping her keep balance. Behind them, the sounds of fighting grew louder. A Swarm warrior jumped toward David from behind a rock. David did not see it coming, but Raven did. Even hurt, she was still a dragon. She opened her mouth and breathed fire. The bug creature turned to ash in seconds. Now we are even, Raven said with a weak smile. They reached the pickup point just as the human ships arrived. David helped Raven get on board the largest ship. The other soldiers looked nervous about flying with a dragon, but David did not care. As the ship flew away from the planet, David sat beside Raven. She was sleeping now, tired from the medicine and the long walk. Her breathing was steady and strong. One of the other medics came over to David. "That was pretty stupid," he said. "Risking your life for an alien." David looked out the window at the stars. "She's not an alien," he said. "She's a soldier, just like us." The war continued for another year after that day. David heard that Raven had recovered fully and returned to fighting. He never saw her again during the war. When the humans and their allies finally won, David went home to Earth. He thought about Raven sometimes, wondering if she had made it through the war alive. He never expected to see her again. He was wrong about that. Rain hit the windows of David's small apartment like tiny hammers. 2 years had passed since the war ended, but some nights it felt like yesterday. David sat on his old couch staring at the news on his small TV screen. They were talking about the victory parade that happened last month. He had not gone to watch it. David worked at a corner store now 3 blocks from his apartment. The pay was not good, but it was enough to buy food and pay rent. The government gave him some money each month because he was a veteran, but it was not much. Most days he felt invisible. People walked past him on the street like he was not there. The apartment was quiet except for the rain and the TV. David liked it quiet. Loud noises made him think of the war. Sometimes he heard explosions that were not really there. The doctor said this was normal for soldiers who came home. They had a name for it, but David did not like to use that name. His phone rang. David looked at it but did not answer. It was probably his sister again asking if he was okay. She called every few days. David knew she meant well, but talking was hard sometimes. Words felt heavy in his mouth. The TV showed a commercial for a new restaurant. Happy families sat around tables eating and laughing. David turned off the TV and went to the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator and stared inside. A carton of milk, some old bread, and a container of vanilla ice cream. He had bought the ice cream weeks ago but never ate it. David made himself a sandwich and sat at his small table. Outside, the rain got heavier. Lightning flashed, followed by thunder that made him jump. He still did not like sudden loud sounds. Around 9 o'clock, David heard a noise on his fire escape. It sounded like something heavy landing on the metal steps. He looked out the window but saw nothing. The noise came again, louder this time. Then came a sound that made his blood freeze, a roar. Not angry, but... Calling, David opened his window and stuck his head out into the rain. The fire escape was empty, but he could hear something moving above him on the roof. Heavy footsteps. Something big. "Hello?" David called out. "Is someone there?" A huge shape dropped down from above and landed on the fire escape platform right outside his window. The metal groaned under the weight. David's eyes went wide. It was a dragon. Not just any dragon. Even in the dark rain, David could see the familiar dark red scales and the scars on her side where he had patched her up during the war. One wing still bent slightly different than the other. "Raven?" David whispered. The dragon's green eyes looked directly at him. "Hello, David Price," she said in her deep voice. "I have been looking for you." David stared at her in shock. She was bigger than he remembered. Her head was level with his window, even though she was standing on the fire escape below. Water dripped from her scales. "What are you doing here?" David asked. "I owe you a debt," Raven said simply. "You saved my life. Now I must protect yours until the debt is paid." "You don't owe me anything," David said. "I was just doing my job." Raven shook her head. "Among my people, a life debt is sacred. I cannot rest until it is fulfilled." The rain was getting them both wet. David stepped back from the window. "You can't stay out there. You'll get sick." "Dragons do not get sick from rain," Raven said. "Well, you're making me feel bad. Come inside." Raven looked at the small window, then at her large body. "I do not think I will fit." David had not thought about that. His apartment was made for humans, not 12-foot-tall dragons. But he could not leave her outside in the storm. "Try the living room window," David said. "It's bigger." David went to his living room and opened the large window that faced the fire escape. Raven climbed up and carefully squeezed through the opening. Her shoulders barely fit. Once inside, she looked around at the small room with curiosity. "This is where you live?" she asked. It's not much, but it's home. Raven tried to stand up straight, but her head hit the ceiling. She had to crouch down to fit in the room. When she moved, her tail knocked over David's coffee table. The wood split in half. "I'm sorry," Raven said quickly. "I will replace it." "Don't worry about it," David said. "I never liked that table anyway." Raven curled up on the floor, trying to make herself smaller. She was still huge. She took up most of the living room space. Her scales left puddles of rainwater on the carpet. "You have been well?" Raven asked. David sat down on his couch, which was now very close to a dragon's head. "I'm fine. Just working and living. Normal stuff." Raven studied his face with her sharp eyes. "You are not happy." David looked away. "I'm okay. In the war, your eyes were bright. Now they are dull. What happened?" "Nothing happened. That's the problem." David told Raven about his life since the war. The boring job, the empty days, the way people looked right through him. He had thought coming home would feel good. Instead, it felt like being lost. "I understand," Raven said. "Many dragon warriors feel the same after battle ends. We call it the gray time. Life becomes colorless. What do dragons do about it? We find new purpose. New battles to fight, new lives to protect." Raven looked around the apartment again. "This place is not safe," she said. "What do you mean?" "No guards, no walls. Any enemy could enter through these windows." David almost smiled. "This isn't a war zone, Raven. This is just a regular city. The most dangerous thing here is probably bad pizza." "I will protect you anyway," Raven said firmly. "It is my duty." David realized she was serious. "You can't just move in here. Where would you even sleep?" "Here," Raven said, settling down on the floor. "I have slept in worse places. What about food? Dragons eat meat, right? I can barely afford to feed myself. I will hunt." "You can't hunt in the city. There are laws." Raven looked confused. "Then what do dragons eat in human cities?" David had no idea. He had never thought about what dragons ate when they were not at war. He looked at Raven, who was dripping on his carpet and trying to fit in his tiny apartment. She had traveled across the galaxy to find him because she thought she owed him something. "Okay," David said. "You can stay. But just for a few days until we figure something else out." Raven's eyes brightened. "Thank you, David Price. I will be the best guardian you have ever had." David looked at his broken coffee table and the puddles on his floor. "I believe you," he said. That night, David lay in his bed listening to Raven's deep breathing in the living room. For the first time in months, he did not have bad dreams about the war. Having a dragon in his apartment was strange, but it was not boring. Maybe his gray time was about to get more colorful. David woke up to the sound of someone talking loudly outside his apartment door. He checked his clock. 7 in the morning. He stumbled out of bed and looked through the peephole. Mrs. Chen from down the hall was talking to the mailman. Both of them looked scared. "I'm telling you, there's something big in that apartment," Mrs. Chen was saying. "I heard roaring last night. And this morning I saw huge footprints in the hallway." David looked down. Sure enough, there were wet dragon footprints leading from the stairs to his door. Raven must have gone out during the night. "Maybe it's a really big dog," the mailman suggested. "Dogs don't have claws like that," Mrs. Chen said, pointing at deep scratches in the floor. David opened his door quickly. "Good morning, Mrs. Chen. Beautiful day, isn't it?" Mrs. Chen stared at him. "David, what is that noise coming from your apartment?" From inside came the sound of Raven trying to move around without breaking more furniture. Something crashed, followed by a guilty rumble. "I'm rearranging furniture," David said. Mrs. Chen did not look convinced, but the mailman handed David his letters and left quickly. Mrs. Chen followed, still looking back with suspicious eyes. David closed the door and went into the living room. Raven was sitting very still in the middle of the room. His bookshelf was now in pieces on the floor. "I was trying to find something to read," Raven explained, "but the wooden structure was not built for dragon strength." David looked at his scattered books and broken shelf. "Most things in here aren't built for dragon strength." "I am sorry. I will be more careful." Raven did try to be more careful, but living with a dragon in a small space was harder than David had expected. When Raven turned around, her tail knocked things over. When she stretched, her claws left marks in the walls. When she tried to help by washing dishes, she crushed the plates in her huge hands. The biggest problem was food. Dragons needed to eat a lot. Raven tried to explain what dragons normally ate, but most of it sounded expensive or illegal in the city. "Raw fish is good," Raven said. "Large fish. Shark size. Sharks cost more than I make in a month, David said. Wild deer? You need a hunting license for that. And you have to go to special places. Large birds? Same problem. By the third day, Raven was getting very hungry. She tried to hide it, but David could tell. She moved slower and her scales looked dull. She spent most of the time curled up on the floor trying to save energy. David felt terrible. He had been eating normal meals while his guest starved. He looked in his refrigerator, hoping to find something Raven could eat. The milk was no good for a carnivore. The bread was definitely not dragon food. But there was still that container of vanilla ice cream he had bought weeks ago. David took out the ice cream and looked at it. It was not meat, but it had milk in it. Milk came from animals. Maybe it would help until he could figure out a real solution. Raven, David called. Want to try something? Raven lifted her head. What is it? David showed her the container. It's called ice cream. It's hard to explain. Just try a little bit. David opened the container and held it out. Raven sniffed it carefully. Her nostrils flared. It smells interesting, she said. Cold. Sweet. Use your claw to scoop some out, David suggested. Raven dipped one claw into the ice cream and licked it off. Her reaction was immediate and dramatic. Her eyes went very wide. Her pupils got bigger until they were huge black circles. All her scales seemed to shimmer and change color slightly. What? Raven said slowly. What is this substance? Just ice cream. Do you like it? Instead of answering, Raven stuck her whole snout into the container and began eating rapidly. She finished the entire thing in less than 30 seconds. When she lifted her head, her face was covered in vanilla ice cream. David Price, Raven said in a very serious voice. This is the most wonderful thing I have ever tasted. David stared at her. Really? The cold sensation, the sweetness, the smooth texture. It is like flying through clouds made of happiness. Raven licked the empty container clean, then looked at David with desperate eyes. Is there more? Well, I could buy more. Please, Raven said. I need more of this ice cream immediately. David had never seen Raven look so excited about anything, not even during the war. Her tail was wagging like a giant dog's tail. Her scales were bright and shiny again. Okay, David said. I'll go to the store. David went to the grocery store and bought 6 containers of ice cream. Different flavors this time. Chocolate, strawberry, mint chip, cookie dough, rocky road, and butter pecan. He spent most of his food money for the week, but seeing Raven happy was worth it. When he got home, Raven was waiting by the door like she had been watching for him. Did you get more? She asked before he was even inside. I got 6 containers. Raven's eyes lit up like green stars. 6. You are the most generous human in the galaxy. David showed her all the different flavors. Raven wanted to try each one immediately. She ate them in order, making happy rumbling sounds with each bite. Her favorite was chocolate. This brown flavor, she said with her mouth full. It tastes like victory and sunshine combined. David watched in amazement as Raven finished all 6 containers in one sitting. She was like a 12-foot-tall child discovering candy for the first time. How do you feel? David asked. I feel incredible, Raven said. Strong and happy and I cannot describe it. It is like the feeling after winning a great battle, but sweeter. Then Raven did something David had never seen her do before. She smiled. Not a scary dragon smile with lots of teeth, but a real happy smile. Thank you, David Price, she said. You have given me a great gift. David smiled back. You're welcome. But later that night, David heard Raven moving around the apartment. He got up to check on her and found her sitting in front of the refrigerator, staring at it with intense concentration. Raven, what are you doing? I am wondering, she said without turning around, if there might be more ice cream hiding in this cold box. There isn't. We ate it all. Raven continued staring at the refrigerator. But tomorrow there could be more ice cream? I suppose so. Good, Raven said. That is very good. David went back to bed, but he could hear Raven settling down on the floor right next to the refrigerator. Just before he fell asleep, he heard her whisper to herself, ice cream. Beautiful, wonderful ice cream. David had a feeling his grocery bills were about to get much bigger. David woke up to find Raven's giant head inches from his face. Her green eyes were wide and desperate. David Price, she whispered urgently. The cold box is empty. David looked at his alarm clock. It was 5 in the morning. What do you mean empty? No ice cream. I checked very carefully. 3 times. David sat up in bed. But I just bought more yesterday. Yes, and it was delicious. But now it is gone. David got up and went to the kitchen. The refrigerator was indeed empty of ice cream. But he had bought 12 containers yesterday. Enough to last a week. Raven, did you eat all 12 containers? Raven looked embarrassed. I could not help myself. The ice cream called to me in the night. It whispered sweet promises of happiness. David stared at her. Ice cream doesn't whisper. This ice cream does. David realized he had a serious problem. Raven was addicted to ice cream. Actually addicted. She had eaten a week's worth of food in one night and now she was having withdrawal symptoms. My scales feel itchy, Raven complained, and my thoughts are all gray and sad. I need ice cream to make the colors come back. David checked his wallet. He had spent almost all his money on ice cream already. His rent was due next week. But looking at Raven's miserable expression, he could not say no. Okay, David said. I'll buy more, but we need to talk about limits. Limits are for beings who do not understand true joy, Raven said seriously. David went to the store and bought 20 containers this time. He also bought a small notebook to keep track of how much Raven was eating. Maybe if he wrote it down, he could figure out a pattern. The pattern turned out to be simple. Raven ate ice cream constantly. She had some for breakfast, some for lunch, some for dinner, and some for midnight snacks. She ate ice cream when she was happy, when she was sad, when she was bored, and when she was excited. David tried to explain that humans had budgets. I only make so much money each month, he said. If we spend it all on ice cream, we can't pay for the apartment. Then we will live somewhere else, Raven said, eating rocky road straight from the container. Under a bridge, in a cave. As long as there is ice cream, I will be happy. We need the apartment because it has a refrigerator to keep the ice cream cold. This made Raven stop eating for a moment. You make a good point, she admitted. David thought about asking Raven to get a job, but that seemed impossible. She was 12 feet tall with wings and breathed fire. Most human jobs were not designed for dragons. Maybe you could do construction work, David suggested. You're really strong. Raven was excited about this idea. She had been feeling useless sitting in the apartment all day while David worked. The next morning, she followed David to the construction site where they were building a new office building. The construction boss, a tough man named Pete, looked up at Raven with his mouth hanging open. That's a dragon, Pete said. Her name is Raven, David explained. She's looking for work. She's very strong and she learns fast. Pete walked around Raven, looking her up and down. Can you lift heavy things? I can lift very heavy things, Raven said proudly. Pete pointed to a steel beam that usually took 4 men to carry. Move that beam over there. Raven picked up the beam with one hand and gently placed it where Pete had pointed. The human workers stopped what they were doing to stare. You're hired, Pete said immediately. When can you start? Right now, Raven said. David went to his own job feeling hopeful. Maybe Raven could earn enough money to pay for her own ice cream. But when he came home that evening, he found Raven sitting sadly in the apartment. How was your first day? David asked. It did not go well, Raven said. David noticed that half the building they had been working on was now missing. What happened? I tried to help, Raven explained. The humans were working so slowly. It would have taken them weeks to finish the building. So I decided to speed up the process. By doing what? I used my fire breath to weld all the metal pieces together at once. Very efficient. David covered his face with his hands. And? Apparently human buildings are not supposed to be welded into one solid piece. The structure became too heavy and fell down. Also, I may have accidentally melted some important equipment. Are you banned from the construction site? Pete used several words I do not understand, but I believe the answer is yes. David sat down heavily on his couch. His money was running out fast. Raven was eating more ice cream every day, and now she had destroyed a building. I am sorry, Raven said quietly. I wanted to help, but I only made things worse. It's okay, David said, though it really was not okay. We'll figure something out. That night, David lay awake trying to think of solutions. He could ask his sister for money, but she did not have much either. He could get a second job, but when would he sleep? He could try to explain to Raven that she needed to eat less ice cream, but every time he suggested it, she looked so sad that he gave up. Around midnight, David heard a soft knocking at his door. He got up and looked through the peephole. It was Mrs. Chen from down the hall. She was holding a plate of cookies, David opened the door carefully, making sure Raven stayed hidden in the living room. "Hi, Mrs. Chen. It's pretty late." "I could not sleep," she said. "I keep hearing strange noises from your apartment." "Are you okay?" "Everything's fine." Mrs. Chen tried to look past him into the apartment. "I brought cookies. Chocolate chip. I thought maybe you were stressed about something and could use a treat." The word treat made Raven's head poke around the corner. When she saw the cookies, her eyes went wide. "Are those sweet?" Raven called out hopefully. Mrs. Chen screamed and dropped the plate. Cookies scattered across the hallway floor. That's a dragon," Mrs. Chen stammered. "This is Raven," David said quickly. "She's my roommate." "Your roommate is a dragon?" "It's a long story." Mrs. Chen stared at Raven, who was trying to squeeze through the doorway to reach the dropped cookies. "Is she dangerous?" "Only to ice cream," David said. Mrs. Chen looked confused, but she helped David pick up the cookies. When Raven tasted one, she made the same happy sound she made with ice cream. "These are almost as good as ice cream," Raven said to Mrs. Chen. "You are a talented creator of sweet things." Mrs. Chen blushed. "Thank you, I think." After Mrs. Chen left, David realized something important. Raven liked other sweet things besides ice cream. Maybe he could find cheaper alternatives. Cookies cost less than ice cream. So did candy and cake. It was not a perfect solution, but it was a start. David made a mental note to research the economics of feeding a dragon's sweet tooth. He just hoped his apartment could survive whatever came next. David was eating breakfast when 3 black cars pulled up outside his apartment building. Through his window, he watched as people in expensive suits got out. They did not look like normal visitors. "Raven," David called quietly. "Come look at this." Raven squeezed over to the window, a spoon of ice cream still in her mouth. When she saw the people outside, her scales changed color slightly. Dragon body language for worry. "Those are government people," she said. "From different planets. Well, how can you tell?" "The tall blue one is from Centauri Prime. The short green one is from the Crystal Worlds. The one that looks like a walking tree is from the Forest Confederation, and the humans are probably from Earth's Galactic Council office." David felt his stomach drop. Why would they be here? Someone must have reported that a dragon is living on Earth. Before David could ask more questions, there was a firm knock on his door. David and Raven looked at each other. "Maybe they will go away," Raven whispered hopefully. The knock came again, louder this time. A voice called out, "David Price? We know you're in there. We need to talk." David opened the door slowly. 4 alien beings and 2 humans in black suits stood in the hallway. Mrs. Chen was peeking out of her door with curious eyes. "Mr. Price," said one of the humans, a serious woman with short hair. "I'm Agent Ross from the Galactic Relations Department. We understand you're housing a dragon without proper permits." "Permits?" David asked. "All interspecies cohabitation must be registered with the Council," said the blue alien in perfect English. "Dragons are classified as Class A sentient warriors. They require special documentation." Raven stepped into view behind David. The aliens and agents all took a step back. Even though they probably dealt with different species all the time, seeing a 12-foot dragon in a small apartment was still shocking. "I am Flamewing Raven," she said formally. "I claim protection under warrior bond laws." The tree-like alien rustled its leaves. "Warrior bonds are rare these days. What is the nature of your bond with this human?" "He saved my life in battle. I owe him protection until the debt is paid." The green alien pulled out a small device and started taking notes. "And how long have you been here?" 2 weeks, Raven said. 2 weeks? Agent Ross looked amazed. "How has no one reported this before now?" David thought about Mrs. Chen, who had been bringing them cookies every day since she found out about Raven, and the mailman, who now left packages outside their door instead of knocking, and the pizza delivery guy, who had screamed the first time he saw Raven but now just called out, "Dragon pizza delivery," from the hallway. "People in this building are very understanding," David said. The blue alien stepped forward. "May we come in? We need to assess the living situation." David let them into his apartment. They looked around at the claw marks on the walls, the broken furniture, and the 17 empty ice cream containers stacked by the refrigerator. "Interesting," said the green alien, examining the ice cream containers. "What are these?" "Ice cream containers," David said. "And why are there so many?" Raven looked embarrassed. I enjoy ice cream very much. The tree alien made a sound like wind through branches. You enjoy human food? This is unusual for dragons. Not just any human food, Raven said. Ice cream is special. It creates feelings of joy and peace. It makes colors brighter and thoughts clearer. The aliens all looked at each other with surprise. You're describing chemical euphoria, Agent Ross said. Are you saying ice cream affects dragons like a drug? Not like a drug, Raven protested. Ice cream is good and pure and wonderful. The green alien scanned Raven with its device. Fascinating. Her brain chemistry shows elevated happiness hormones. The cold, sweet stimulus appears to trigger a pleasure response far beyond normal food enjoyment. Agent Ross was writing quickly in her notebook. This could be significant. If ice cream affects all dragons this way, she was interrupted by a loud thump on the fire escape. Then another. And another. What was that? The blue alien asked. David went to the window and looked out. His eyes went wide. Oh no, what is it? Raven asked. There are more dragons out there. Everyone rushed to the window. On the fire escape on the roof and hovering in the air were 6 more dragons, all different colors and sizes, but all staring at David's apartment with intense interest. One of them, a massive gold dragon, called out in a booming voice. Flamewing Raven! We have come to investigate these rumors of human magic. Raven sighed. News travels fast among dragons. Agent Ross looked panicked. How many dragons are we talking about? Hard to say, the blue alien observed. I count at least 12 more landing on nearby buildings. David watched in amazement as dragons began appearing all over his neighborhood. They perched on streetlights, sat on rooftops, and gathered in the park across the street. People on the ground were stopping to stare and take pictures with their phones. The gold dragon called out again. Raven, show us this ice cream that creates such happiness. I cannot, Raven called back. David Price only has enough for me. This caused an immediate uproar among the dragons. They began talking all at once in their deep rumbling voices. Only enough for one dragon? What kind of magic is this limited? Can the human make more? We demand to try this ice cream. Agent Ross grabbed David's arm. Mr. Price, we have a situation.
There are now 23 dragons gathered in a 6-block radius around your apartment.
The mayor is calling. The news crews are on their way. And the Galactic Council is demanding answers. What do you want me to do? David asked. First, we need to understand this ice cream phenomenon, said the green alien. If human food can create this kind of reaction in dragons, it could change everything. The tree alien nodded its branches. This could be the key to peaceful dragon-human relations. No more warrior bonds or territorial disputes, just ice cream diplomacy. Raven looked out at all the dragons gathering outside. They will not leave until they taste ice cream, she said. Dragons are very persistent about things that interest them. Agent Ross was making phone calls rapidly. I need emergency ice cream delivery to downtown Seattle. Yes, ice cream. No, this is not a joke. We have a code dragon situation. David looked around at his small apartment, now full of government agents and aliens with dozens of dragons gathering outside. A month ago, his biggest problem was deciding what to have for dinner. Now he was apparently at the center of an interspecies diplomatic crisis. Raven, he said quietly, I think your life debt is about to get a lot more complicated. But also more delicious, Raven said hopefully. Outside, more dragons were arriving every minute. David's quiet little neighborhood was about to become the most famous place in the galaxy, all because of ice cream. 6 months later, David stood on the balcony of his new office building, watching humans and dragons work together in the factory below. It still seemed like a dream sometimes. The building used to be an old warehouse. Now it was the headquarters of Dragon's Delight, the galaxy's first interspecies ice cream company. Through the large windows, David could see the production floor where human workers operated the ice cream machines while Dragon employees handled the heavy lifting and quality control. The strawberry batches, ready for testing, called out a purple dragon named Steelclaw from below. Bring it up here, David called back. Raven wants to try it. David went back inside his office. It was much bigger than his old apartment, with high ceilings and reinforced floors built specifically for dragon visitors. Raven was sitting at a specially made conference table, reading reports on her tablet. How are the numbers looking? David asked. Excellent, Raven said happily. Orders are coming in from 47 different planets. The Warrior Council has officially declared ice cream a cultural treasure and wants to establish trade agreements. David shook his head in amazement. It had all started the day those government agents showed up at his apartment. When word spread that ice cream made dragons happy, everything changed very quickly. The Galactic Council had commissioned emergency studies. Scientists from 12 different planets came to Earth to study the ice cream phenomenon. They discovered that dragon physiology processed the combination of cold, sugar, and dairy in a unique way that created intense pleasure responses. Something about their ancient evolutionary biology made them incredibly sensitive to the specific compounds in ice cream. It is like humans and music, one scientist had explained. Most species hear sound, but humans have a special emotional reaction to organized sound patterns. Dragons have the same kind of special reaction to ice cream. Once the scientists understood what was happening, the government agents had a new problem. Hundreds of dragons were arriving on Earth every day, all wanting to try ice cream. The local stores could not keep up with demand. There were dragon traffic jams in the sky above Seattle. The mayor had declared a state of emergency. That was when David had his idea. What if we made our own ice cream? He had suggested to Agent Ross, specifically for dragons. We could make it in large quantities and study what flavors they like best. Agent Ross had thought it was crazy at first, but as more dragons arrived and the situation got more chaotic, crazy started to sound reasonable. The government provided funding and a building. David provided the human knowledge of ice cream making. Raven provided dragon connections and cultural insight. Together they created something completely new. Dragon ice cream was different from human ice cream. Dragons preferred stronger flavors and bigger portions. They liked textures that humans found too intense. David had spent weeks experimenting with different recipes, with Raven and her dragon friends as taste testers. Their breakthrough came when David created volcanic chocolate chip, a rich chocolate ice cream with pieces of spicy cinnamon candy that created a warm sensation in the mouth. Dragons loved the contrast between cold and warm, sweet and spicy. It became their best-selling flavor overnight. Steelclaw brought up the strawberry samples. David and Raven each tried a spoonful. Too mild, Raven said immediately. Dragons will think this is boring. What if we add some tartness? David suggested. Maybe some lemon pieces. Or those human fruits called hot peppers, Steelclaw added. I enjoyed those when you let me try them. David made notes on his tablet. After 6 months of working together, he had learned that dragons were excellent at describing flavors. They had very sensitive taste and smell. Many of their suggestions had led to popular new flavors. The success of Dragon's Delight had changed both David's and Raven's lives completely. David was no longer a lonely veteran working at a corner store. He was the co-founder of the most successful interspecies business in galactic history. He had purpose again. He felt useful and important. Raven was no longer a warrior without a war. She had become an ambassador between humans and dragons, helping both species understand each other better. She still insisted that she owed David a life debt, but now it felt more like partnership than obligation. The afternoon shift wants to try making a new flavor, Steelclaw reported. They call it Thunderstorm Surprise. It is vanilla ice cream with crackling candy that makes noise when you eat it. Sounds interesting, David said. Tell them to make a small batch for testing. As Steelclaw flew back down to the production floor, David's assistant knocked on the office door. Mr. Price? The council representatives are here for the monthly meeting. David and Raven went to the main conference room. Representatives from the Galactic Council, the Dragon Warrior Alliance, and Earth's government met every month to discuss the ongoing success of the ice cream project, the cultural impact. Reports are very positive, said the blue alien David had met at his apartment 6 months ago. Dragon aggression levels have decreased by 40% across the galaxy since ice cream became widely available. Dragons are happier, agreed the representative from the Warrior Alliance, a large silver dragon named Mountain Song. Many young dragons are choosing careers in food service instead of military training. Agent Ross nodded. Earth's tourism industry has exploded. People come from all over the galaxy to visit the original Dragon's Delight factory. The economic benefits have been enormous. Any problems to report? David asked. Minor issues only, said the Earth government representative. Some dragons are having trouble with ice cream addiction, but we've opened support groups to help with moderation. Raven looked slightly embarrassed. She had needed to join one of those support groups herself after eating nothing but ice cream for 3 weeks straight. The only real concern, continued the Earth representative, is that other species are demanding their own special human foods. The cat-like aliens from Felina want us to research fish-based treats. The rock people from Granite Prime want to know if humans have any edible minerals. One thing at a time, David said with a smile. After the meeting, David and Raven returned to the balcony to watch the sunset. The sky was filled with dragons coming and going from the factory, carrying ice cream shipments to different parts of the galaxy. Do you ever miss the simple days? David asked. When it was just you and me in a small apartment? Raven considered this while eating a container of Thunderstorm Surprise. The crackling candy made little popping sounds as she chewed. Sometimes, she said, but I like this better. We are helping people. Both humans and dragons are happier because of what we built together. And you're not bored anymore? How could I be bored? Every day brings new flavors to try and new problems to solve. Yesterday, a group of young dragons asked if we could make ice cream that changes colors. The day before, a human scientist wanted to know if we could make ice cream that glows in the dark. David laughed. What did you tell them? I told them to talk to you. Humans are very good at making impossible things possible. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their employees finish the day's work. Human and dragon workers were loading trucks with ice cream shipments. Some of the dragons offered to fly the shipments to nearby cities instead of using trucks, which was faster but required special permits. Raven, David said eventually, do you still think you owe me a life debt? Raven was quiet for a long moment. The debt was paid long ago, she said finally. You saved my life and I have protected yours. But now we are something more than debtor and creditor. What are we? Partners, friends, family perhaps. Raven smiled, showing her large teeth in a way that looked friendly instead of scary. And co-creators of galactic happiness, David smiled back. I like that description. As the sun set behind the mountains, dragons from around the city began arriving for the evening shift. Dragon's Delight operated 24 hours a day to keep up with galactic demand. The night shift dragons preferred different flavors than the day shift dragons, so they had to adjust production accordingly. Tomorrow we start working on the winter seasonal flavors, Raven said. I am excited to try your idea about peppermint ice cream with warm spices. And next month we're opening the second factory on Mars, David added. The dragons there want spicier flavors because of the cold climate. David looked out at the busy factory, the happy workers, and the dragons flying through the evening sky. A year ago he had been alone and purposeless. Now he was part of something bigger than himself, something that brought joy to beings across the galaxy. You know what? David said. I think saving you in that war was the best decision I ever made. Even though it led to your apartment being destroyed by dragon visitors? Even though it led to galactic ice cream chaos and government investigations and having to learn 17 different alien languages for business meetings? Yes, even though all of that. Raven's scales shimmered with happiness. Then I am glad you are the kind of human who helps people, even when it is inconvenient. And I'm glad you're the kind of dragon who gets addicted to ice cream instead of treasure or conquest. They laughed together as the first stars appeared in the sky. Somewhere in the galaxy, dragons were eating ice cream and feeling happy. Humans were learning that friendship could cross any barrier, even species, and two unlikely partners were proving that the best solutions to life's problems often came from the most unexpected places. In the distance, David could hear the sound of dragons singing work songs as they loaded the night shipments. It was a sound that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Now it was just another part of his wonderful, chaotic, ice cream-filled life.